Okay, so this is interesting. This is reporting from Mikhail Klementov, who's a former Washington Post games journalist who's written a bunch of the esports scene, and done a bunch of work in the gaming space, who's apparently breaking a story that Riot Games has canceled a game called Pool Party, an unannounced Smash Bros. Style fighting game. A team of 70 to 80 employees was staffed to the project, a melee-like platform fighter set in the League of Legends universe. And that was quite interesting. I had not heard anything about that. That's not really surprising, I should say. It's not like I have, the inside track at Riot, but one of the things is Riot has, and this is something Mikhail goes on to note in the article, Riot has a bunch of internal teams in their R&D department who are always working on stuff. They're always working on stuff, they're testing things out, they're pitching things. There's a lot, and I mean a lot of projects that Riot has put varying amounts of work into that have then just sort of either quietly been canceled or have sort of been chaotically thrown between various teams that have tried to work on and never really gone anywhere. It's very rare, though. It's a fairly rare occurrence for anything about those games to come out to the public, though. That's not something that happens very often. Which is interesting, because, it's not like Riot runs a tight ship in terms of preventing leaks and stuff, but it's also one of those things that's not really newsworthy, right? Because this is something that happens at, a lot of major game studios. They'll have teams internally working on stuff, right? And it's all just, it's experiments, it's things that they're working on that never reach beyond, a prototyping stage, right? Beyond the stage of, here's a few people, they have some kind of passion project, some kind of idea they're working on, it doesn't really work, it's not really hitting what the market wants or whatever, and then it gets canceled, and, nothing ever comes of it. There's not really any, concept art thrown around. Liam Robertson over at he works with Did You Know Gaming these days, who does the series Game History Secrets. He has a lot of good videos about interesting sort of famous canceled projects that he digs into a lot. I recommend checking him out if you want to know more about this stuff. But it's interesting with Riot because little of their canceled internal projects tend to get reported on to the public very much. So it's interesting to see a story with a reasonable amount of detail like this sort of being broken. And the other thing that's interesting is that 70 to 80 employees were working on the game when it was shuttered. This is according to Mikhail, which okay, so that tells me that this was not just an idle fancy, right? Which would be why he bothers to report on it. This is not just an idle fancy. They were working on this, capital W, working on it, right? With the intent of actually, this is something that's gone beyond just the prototyping stage or the pitching stage, and they were actually putting real work into it, which is the sort of thing that makes my ears perk up a little bit, because that means oh, there might be some concept art for that then out there somewhere. There might actually be some material available for that was produced that maybe we could conceivably get to take a look at. And I would be very, very... I would really love to see that. I would really love to see, what they... Because, going by the name Pool Party, right? It was going to be a party game, presumably, and one can imagine if it was a platform fighter that was supposed to be sort of a Smash thing, it would be everyone's fighting near the pool, you have to knock the opponents into the pool, that's how you get the KOs, that sort of thing, a very lighthearted, which makes me wonder if it was gonna be specifically based around, the Pool Party skin line, and it's everyone in beachwear sort of thing, which, that might be interesting. The article goes on to note that part of the reason why it got canceled is that Multiverses kind of fell flat on its fucking face. According to sources familiar with the project's development, executives at Riot were spooked by what they perceived as the failure of Multiverses, a free-to-play fighting game starring characters from franchises owned by Warner Bros. Which, yeah, but that's also, which... This is one of those things where you're sitting on the outside, right? I don't give a shit that much about, oh, what's the market value of the valuation of the thing in terms of, I don't really care about those things that much because I'm a consumer, I'm not a corporation, and I'm not an executive. But it is one of those things that's yeah, but Multiverses failed because it wasn't that good, is the thing, right? That's... Multiverses failed because it kind of sucked, right? It didn't fail because the market doesn't want platform fighters, right? Like, that's not why Multiverses went down. It went down because it ultimately wasn't a very good game, and it had competition from things like the Nickelodeon platform fighter, and like a few other sort of like that are based on like, oh, these are the famous IP cartoon things where like people are trying to do that. What League of Legends would have is the same advantage that they kind of have with 2XKO, is that they don't have to be like, this is a multiverse thing where like, wouldn't it be fun if Steven Universe could beat up Arya Stark? Ha ha ha. Like, that wouldn't have to be the appeal of a Riot Games platform fighter. Like, their thing could be like, no, here's a bunch of, from the perspective of anyone who's not into League of Legends, here's a bunch of original characters, right? Which I feel like that's a very different pitch. Again, I'm not a marketing guy. The marketing guys at Riot might have some very different thoughts and opinions and data about this. But like, for me, thinking about like a League of Legends platform fighters, like that's the kind of thing that sounds like a natural slam dunk in some ways. Not to say that like, oh, it would be super popular, it would be a Smash killer. Absolutely not. Nothing is ever going to kill Smash. It's not going to happen. But in the sense that like, that sounds like something you could definitely use the League of Legends champions for, right? That sounds like the kind of project that League of Legends champions would be kind of perfect for, just like, oh yeah, just slap them into this fun thing and let them like go at it as like a party game, a casual party game, which is like, and that also feels like something that there is a space for in Riot's sort of lineup, because like, Riot has, right now, Legends of Runeterra, which they're slowly strangling to death by just, like, not pouring any resources. They're keeping it on maintenance, which, like, I'm glad that it's on maintenance and that it gets to very slowly put out, like, sort of minimal viable extra content from the perspective of this is from a corporation that has, like, billions of dollars in the bank. It's still doing more than most indie games can possibly do in terms of its budget, right? They have Legends of Runeterra. They will have 2XKO eventually. The MMO got delayed indefinitely because, like they had a shakeup in, like, the staffing over there. They fired 500 people. That probably also threw a wrench into their fucking works. Maybe they shouldn't have done that. And, like, clearly they had some kind of internal creative decision of, like, going in a completely different direction with the MMO from what they had been doing for, like, years, right? But Riot doesn't really have a game that uses their IP in, like, a real, like, this is a casual party game, anyone can pick it up sort of thing. They were sort of trying to do that with some of the Riot Forge titles before they shut that shit down as well. It's something that, like, this is something that Klimentov notes in his article as well. You can find a link to this article down in the description, by the way. That, like, we are in a huge contraction for the video game industry, except we're not really, well, we are in a stage of the video game industry having decided to contract itself quite dramatically, is what's going on, right? Because, like, there was, over the course of COVID, there has been this enormous hiring surge, not just in video games, but in tech in general, right? Where companies were just staffing up like absolutely crazy. Like, they were just hiring left and right. They were essentially hoarding staff members for, like, various economic reasons, right? Like, and like with various expectations about like how many projects they'd be able to launch and so on. Like, all based on, like, the way that the economy changed during the height of the COVID pandemic, which isn't actually over, but, you know, we've all sort of decided that we're just going to pretend like it is. And now that party is kind of over, now that, like, the consequences of the interest rates no longer being zero, right, money no longer just being free to borrow, are starting to hit, the corporations that run the games industry are sort of looking at, oh shit, we might not be able to post as much growth next year as we've promised our shareholders. Oh no. And so in order to be able to show growth to their shareholders, like to show that they're making more money than they were last year, it's like, oh, yeah, well, we're going to save a fuck ton of money on payroll by firing tens of thousands of people, like throwing tens of thousands of people into extreme precarity, like people who, like, might not have enough, like, work experience to really reasonably be able to land a job anywhere else, especially when everywhere is all of a sudden firing. Like, cutting people off from their fucking healthcare, people who have lost, like, people whose green cards depended on having that fucking job at one of these major publishers, right? Like, just getting sort of thrown to the fucking wolves, because the games industry overhired massively, and then it has decided, like, oh yeah, we just whoops, we need to show some growth now, so fuck you, bye bye. So like the cancellation of Pool Party as a project is probably also, like, as is noted here, that's probably should also be seen in the context of that Riot's executives, they will have said, oh, we're spooked by the failure of Multiverses, but the reason why they didn't have the confidence to push through and say, no, actually, we have huge IP recognition for this thing, it's this wouldn't compete with something like Multiverses. We could be able to carve out, like, a space in the scene, like, for our thing specifically. The reason they didn't have the confidence to do that is because they were in this thing, like, they were in this mindset of, like, well, we need to cut things, and oh hey, here we have a project where we can make up a reason why that's not viable. Here's a good, like, there's a good reason to cut a bunch, like, to cut a bunch of expenses by, like, cutting funding for this thing. Things are more complicated than that in turn. Like, it's not as though by canceling the game, because as far as I know, as far as any of the story that's come out, no one has been fired, right? Like, the project was canceled, but no one has been fired yet, right? Like, not directly anyway. I would expect there to be some, like, staffing changes at some point, like, but at the very least, everyone got reassigned to other projects. So it's not like it's directly saving money, but it's one of those things of, like, oh, if we actually finished development on this, or we had to start publishing it, or like advertising it, or marketing it, like, that would cost a lot of money down the line. We can save some money by just canceling this shit now, rather than pushing through with it. That's probably also part of the reason why it gets canceled, is because they're getting bearish, right? Like, the mood of the industry is more risk averse now than it had been. And it's never, like, the games industry has never been good with risk at all because it's corporate, but yeah. Anyway, the point of this video is just, I find this really interesting. We don't get to see behind the scenes at Riot's R&D very often, right? Like, remember Project F, which they showed off back at the 10th year anniversary thing, which seemed to be a sort of top-down Diablo-style sort of action-adventure thing? That sort of we had a little bit of footage shown for it. They sort of showed off that they had it, and then since then it's been just silence, like nothing, absolutely nothing, to the point that, like, I'm entirely convinced that game was like suffered the same fate as this, right? Like, I'm convinced that Project F is internally canceled, because no one at Riot has said a goddamn thing about it for years now. Whereas they have been happy to say, like, continuously, oh yeah, we're still working on the MMO. Don't worry, we're still working on the MMO. The MMO is being worked on, right? That they have been happy to say over the course of the last few years, until they were forced to say, yeah, no, we're not working on that same MMO anymore. We're working on something else, a new MMO now. So I just thought it was interesting, like, to get this little insight into, like, internal workings at Riot. It's rare. Originally envisioned as a hardcore fighting game, the pitch for Pool Party changed over the course of development, shifting to include party game elements and casual-friendly mechanics. The change in scope and vision frustrated some staff on the project. That also sounds like some internal conflict over the direction of the thing, where, like, and this doesn't surprise me about Riot, like that if they were working on a platform fighter, they would be like, yeah, we're gonna make it like the fucking platform fighter with the best mechanics and, like, the most of, like, oh yeah, wave dashing, and we're gonna have, like, fucking, like, incredibly complicated, like, DI inputs, and, like, oh yeah, fucking, we're gonna have fighting game inputs, yeah, it's gonna be the best. Like, that doesn't surprise me at all. Like, Riot is kind of that kind of company, down to its marrow in a lot of the places, especially some of the oldest staff they have there. They have that kind of gamer TM mentality in there, which is part of the reason why they had so much trouble. Like again, that's one of the things that I blame the cancellation of Riot Forge on, is that Riot's internal culture, the way that their executives think, right? Like your Mark Merrills, right? The sort of top level gamer executives that they have there, the ones that actually, like, play and enjoy video games and have opinions about them and aren't just bean counters, they tend to be from the, like, yeah, gamer, like, they tend to be from that identity class, right? So, like, I'm not surprised there would be some internal troubles with that, but also, like, if they tried to make a hardcore fighting game out of Pool Party, they would just be cannibalizing 2XKO. Like, they would be cannibalizing that audience. I think, like, that's another thing that sort of intrigued me about the idea of Pool Party is like, oh shit, like an actual casual game from Riot, like one that's like genuinely like, this is a party game. This is like silly fun with pals sort of thing. Because that's one of the things that drove me away from League all those years back is League of Legends, like as esports continued to grow and continued to take over the company's priorities, right? Like, it wasn't just that they started balancing the game almost entirely around competitive. And I know, August, if you see this video, I know, you don't necessarily just balance it around competitive, but you know what I mean, right? Like, that's competitive as a mindset, like the competitive scene as a goal, as a big part of how the game promotes itself, right? Like, because that's what the esports scene is. It promotes League of Legends as a hardcore competitive game, as like a game that's like, this is skill expression, you're going to be the best athlete, you're going to be athletes play this game to do athletics and be like the best they can possibly be. That's a huge part of the marketing now around League of Legends, and that has shaped the fucking culture of the game, like, a lot. Like, a lot of, certainly the toxicity that I ran into back when I should say, I never reached higher than silver. A lot of the toxicity that I ran into back then, like, came from this, like, competitive mindset of, like, if you do anything that's, like, suboptimal, or if you do anything that loses a game, fuck you. Because it's so fucking important to win, right? Where the casual attitude, of, like, where League of Legends as a party game, League of Legends as a, this is something fun I can do with my pals just to, like, play a silly composition and goof around, it really sort of vanished, right? Like, like, even in ARAM, sometimes you get the fucking tryhards, right? Which is where I sort of got excited for things like Arena, and where I am quite excited for the Bullet Heaven mode that they're putting out. I'm disappointed that it's only a mode, and not, like, an actual... I really just want the fucking Bullet Heaven mode to get the TFT treatment. I really want something casual back there, because, like, a fucking Smash-like casual platform fighter with League of Legends champions, right? I am scared of 2xKO a little bit because I don't have the competitive mindset. I just don't. I don't care about winning that much. I've always been fascinated by fighting games. I've always found fighting games very fun. I used to play a bunch of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 with my friend, like, on a PS1 with, like, a shitty PS1 controller. And I sucked at it, but it was fun, right? Like, because it was about... Ah, fuck, I pulled off the super. Yeah, cool animation is playing. Spider-Man is jumping all around the screen. Woo! That used to be the fun of it, right? Like, where it wasn't really that much about getting blood on your tooth, right? Like, oh shit, I'm gonna grind, I'm gonna improve my fundamentals, I'm gonna learn all the fucking frame timings and, like, the exact, like, like, all of that. It was just like, yeah, let's smash these fighting game characters against each other like they're action figures and we're playing, right? Like, that was sort of the vibe. And so I'm worried about 2xKO because I'm really interested in it. There's so much good art and animation in it that I'm excited to try it. I'm excited to try to play it. I am not excited to try and get good at it. Because, like, in League of Legends, one of the things that attracted me to League of Legends was that, like, and that's why I've always played support, basically, is that it's a game where I don't have to be the best guy on the field. I just have to be committed to helping other people succeed. Like, that's a compelling pitch for me, right? Like, that's why I liked playing support, was that, like, okay, I don't have to do the mechanics, I don't have to, like, pull off the amazing play, I don't have to be the playmaker, I don't have to be the guy at the center of the thing, I just have to help someone else succeed. I liked that. I liked the competitive, like, the cooperative aspect of it. I liked, like, the sort of, like, we're working together as a team, trying to sort of, like, win a thing. But again, once the mindset of the game's culture and the game's rhetoric as a product became all about competitive, right? Like, all about, like, grind and, like, doing the climb and, like, getting to the best rank, and, like that became so much of the focus of the culture of the game. I lost touch with wanting to play it anymore. And it's sad, like, because I've spent a lot of my life now... God fucking damn it. I don't want to have that thought. I've spent a lot of my life now engaging with this fucking thing. This fucking company with these fucking games. And I've sort of had to reckon with being in love with something like League of Legends, right? which, you know, was a little rough at times. And like learning like, oh, a casual Smash Bros. Like for League of Legends is like, shit, that would have been fun. That would have been cool. So I'm sad. I'm sad that doesn't get to exist because, well, ostensibly because multiverses, like, oh, multiverses didn't work, that means we should probably cancel this project. I think, and this is me being a cynic, I think more realistic, it was like, here's a good excuse to cancel this project that could end up being expensive in the future. And maybe, like, and there are also, like, no matter how casual they tried to make that platform fighter, they would still be, on some level, competing a little bit with 2XKO, I think. I don't think it really would have been that much of a problem, but, you know. Anyway, I just thought it was really interesting. Again, this is reporting by Mikhail Klementov over at Reader Grev. There's a link to the article down in the description. You can go and read it for yourself. And I guess follow this guy since he has the inside track on things like that. Good work, Mikhail. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Gave me an opportunity to sit here and waffle for 20 minutes about a lot of things that weren't really related to your article, I guess. Yeah. Seriously, if anyone at Riot, like, if y'all have some concept art you want to show off for, like, some of the animations, like, whatever development work you did for that game, you know, hit me up. I want to see it. Like, if you want to show it off, I'd be very happy to do some videos about it. It would have been cool. It really would. Anyway, bye.